Thank you, everyone, for joining today's National Town Hall meeting to celebrate Social Security's 87th birthday. I'm Nancy Altman, President of Social Security Works and Chair of a broad-based Social Security coalition fighting to expand Social Security. We are so fortunate to have with us two leading Social Security champions, Representatives John Larson and Pramila Jayapal, as well as several Social Security beneficiaries. Following their remarks, we will have some audience questions and we'll conclude with a number of recorded statements of other House members, as well as a recorded statement of a surprise guest at the very end. So I hope everyone watching can stay for the entire hour. We will start with Representative John Larson, who chairs the Social Security Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. He knows Social Security as well or better than anyone in Congress and is a tireless champion in support of making our Social Security system even better. Chairman Larson.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And that was quite an introduction, especially coming from someone who does know more about Social Security than anyone I know. So glad to be here with all the viewers. And again, you have to nod your head at the genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and what he was able to enact into law 87 years ago. And also congratulations, and what an honor to be here with Social Security Works for the ongoing efforts to make sure that we not only protect, but that we expand Social Security, something, quite frankly, Congress hasn't done in 51 years. I'm also honored to be here with my colleague, Pramila Jayapal, who, as Nancy pointed out, has also been a leader on several fronts, but clearly in the area of Social Security. I can't thank her enough for her continued commitment to making sure that we get a vote on Social Security. And that's vitally important to all of our concerns. And to be joined again with my good friends, Peter Morey and Julian Blair, is just an added benefit. Martin Luther King used to have a saying called the fierce urgency of now. The fierce urgency of now as it relates to Social Security is that we are in the midst of a global pandemic. And that global pandemic has especially hurt people over the age of 65. More than 756,000 Americans of the 1 million plus who have perished are over the age of 65. And these are the same individuals that are hurt because of the effects of inflation. Inflation always hurts people on fixed income. And for the 65 million Social Security recipients across this nation, that means them. So it's long overdue that we make sure that we're enhancing a program that they need, especially during this pandemic. And especially, as we all know, with the latest variant expected to land in the United States sometime in September. We must be prepared for all contingencies. And being prepared means making sure that we're providing with seniors the means in which they can cope. There is no better program than Social Security, the #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly and the #1 anti-poverty program for children, as well as providing both spousal, dependent coverage, and disability relief as well. It is also the most efficient and effective governmental program that we have. And so everybody, including our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, should be joining with us to make sure that in this time that we take the government's most effective program that helps the least amongst us through these perilous times and make sure that they have the kind of funding that they need and not continue the neglect that has taken place. Now, our colleagues on the other side have plans, but they're not the kind of plans that we want to embrace. Rick Scott has talked about ending Social Security and within 5 years, and we know to imagine that ending Social Security as we know it. And the Republican Study Group has come out with more than 20 cuts, including a 21% cut across the board to Social Security recipients. And in committee and in testimony, they continue to talk about privatization. Let me tell you something. Ending, cutting, or privatizing Social Security will not happen. Not as long as Democrats are at the wheel and on the watch to make sure that we're there fighting on behalf of our senior citizens. Too many people, though, however, are not aware of the dire consequences that lie before this. And we need to make sure that all those recipients, some more than 3 million of our fellow Americans who've paid into a system all their lives and get below poverty level checks from their government, that's wrong. The more than 23 million Americans that will benefit from a tax cut because they have to continue to keep working in order to make ends meet. To make sure that everybody across the board, as Roosevelt had intended, gets an increase in their Social Security benefits, something that hasn't been done in 51 years, and to make sure that we repeal WEP and GPO and the onerous effects that that has had on so many of our teachers and firefighters and police officers and municipal employees. That's why more than 200 individuals have signed on to the Social Security 2100 Act, because we're out not to end benefits as our colleagues would, but to enhance benefits for the very people that need them at this most consequential time for their health and for their well-being. I couldn't be more honored to join today in this conversation with Social Security Works and the more than 350 organizations that are out here supporting this effort to make sure that we get this across the goal line. It's just simply that too important for so many people who rely in so many cases where Social Security is the only benefit that they have. Nobody's getting wealthy on Social Security. It's the sustenance that gets everyone through the day. And it's the best, the absolute best economic development plan in every congressional district. More than 145,000 people per congressional district rely on Social Security, and more than 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. That's why this is such a consequential time. Thank you for joining us today in this town hall, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Chairman Larson. Next, we are so fortunate to have with us Representative Pramila Jayapal, who chairs the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the largest caucus in the House of Representatives. All of America's families, seniors, children, and those in between, owe Representative Jayapal a huge debt of gratitude for her championship of Social Security, Medicare, and so many other essential programs that make all of us so much more secure. Representative Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And Representative Larson is absolutely right when he says there's nobody in this country that knows more about Social Security than you, Nancy Altman. So thank you for just being such a champion. Thank you to Social Security Works. And thank you to my incredible, relentless, for the best, in the best way possible, champion, John Larson, for absolutely refusing to give up on this essential priority. And the Progressive Caucus has been so proud to stand with you, John, at every step of the way and make sure that we get this bill to the floor. But you and your efforts, handing out little cards to every member of Congress so that everybody knows how many Social Security recipients are in their district, it has been just amazing to watch. And we are going to get this done, Representative Larson. I know we are. And I thank you for your efforts. Yes, I'm very proud to represent 100 members of Congress in the Congressional Progressive Caucus. For our members and for our caucus, this is an urgent call for Congress to protect and expand Social Security. And I want to be really clear, Social Security is not an entitlement. Social Security is an earned benefit. And the work that we have to do to make sure that this earned benefit pays out the dividends that keep up with the requirements and the needs of our Social Security recipients is what Social Security 2100 is all about. As John said, Social Security is the most successful anti-poverty program in the country's history. It has lifted more than 20 million Americans out of poverty, including 1 million children and more than 16 million older Americans. And Social Security disability insurance provides a lifeline for roughly 9 million people. In fact, Social Security disability insurance is the way that my husband ended up going to college, because when his father died, he ended up on Social Security disability, or his mom ended up on Social Security disability insurance. I think many Americans, if they were to look at the web of benefits and who is benefited by Social Security, would actually be shocked at a lot of people that they may not even realize are covered. The program is particularly important in providing economic security for communities of color. Without Social Security, the poverty rate among older Latino adults would be 45%, and the poverty rate among older Black adults would be 48%. But what we are seeing is an attack by every Republican majority that has ever been here, and now the minority that is threatening the future of Social Security. 2022 is going to be no different. As Representative Larson said, Rick Scott has already warned that a Republican Senate will end Social Security and Medicare. So that is why it is so important that we Democrats double down and show that we are out here to protect Social Security, not just protect it, but expand it. The Progressive Caucus has endorsed Congressman Larson's bill because it provides a number of key reforms. Of course, it increases benefits. It extends disability to students. It provides caregiver credits. It improves benefits for public service, including teachers. And it ends the sometimes deadly 5-month waiting period for disability insurance. And at this time of rising costs and people's monthly payments not keeping up in the wake of COVID, as Representative Larson said, which disproportionately affected Black and brown folks, but particularly elders, this bill would provide people who rely on Social Security with that desperately needed breathing room. And crucially, regardless of what you might hear, it is paid for by applying payroll tax to wages above $400,000, just making millionaires and billionaires pay the same rate as everyone else. And it's not just good policy to pass Social Security 2100. It's actually good politics too. Polling shows that about 76% of voters support expanding Social Security, including 79% in the most difficult, what we call frontline districts. It's got 86% approval with Democrats. It's got 79% with independents and 84% approval with Republicans. It was 87 years ago yesterday when President Roosevelt signed the first Social Security Act, but that moment still holds lessons for us today. In 1935, the Depression had irrevocably changed the economy, and confidence in old institutions was shaken. Social, political, and cultural shifts meant that traditional sources of economic security, like family wealth and wages, were just not enough for people to get by. And so many Americans were staring into this uncertain and unfamiliar future when a president and Congress stepped up and said, we can take care of each other. We can build a government and an economy where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, where we all pay a little bit so that no one else is left behind. And that's what's required of us now. We have a chance to show up for people, to advance economic and disability justice, and to deliver for our communities. Every single member of Congress should go on record about whether or not they support seniors and people with disabilities, or whether they are going to leave this critical service vulnerable to Republicans taking it all away. When Congress returns from recess in September, we need to bring this bill up in committee and then send it to the floor for a vote. And I intend to work with Congressman Larson and with all of you to make sure that that is exactly what we do. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Representative Jayapal. And now we're going to hear from two beneficiaries. They represent the 65 million beneficiaries who receive benefits every month and for whom Social Security is so important. First, my good friend, Peter Morley.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you to everyone on this esteemed panel. I am beyond humbled to be with you today. What an honor to speak with you on the 87th birthday of Social Security. Social Security, you look great for your age, and I intend on ensuring that you live on to see many more birthdays. I'd like to share my personal story of my journey from patient to national advocate on healthcare and Social Security. In 2007, I was permanently disabled from an accident and unable to work. I was fortunate to be spared the entire cost of my medical bills because I had continuous insurance coverage. But since I can no longer work, I had to apply for Social Security disability. I can't say this enough. It is a daunting task applying for SSDI. Between the application, the waiting period, the physical examinations, it was months. And that is if you are incredibly privileged, as I was, to be awarded on my first try. It wasn't until years later that I found out how many people in my chronic illness communities had to reapply several times before they were approved. Their waiting times are years. All that with no income. Who can live like that? And I will be always grateful that I was approved, because I subsequently had 10 surgeries in 15 years, including 4 spinal surgeries. In 2011, I was diagnosed through an incidental finding with kidney cancer and lost part of my right kidney, but I fought my way into remission. I've had diagnoses over the last 15 years that have catapulted me well above 10 pre-existing conditions. I had to stop counting seriously to get through my day-to-day. In 2013, I was diagnosed with what has become my primary healthcare concern to date, lupus. The most challenging aspect of this disease is the chronic fatigue that I fight every day. It is truly a struggle to get out of bed. I take 38 different medications that cost over $100,000 a year and self-inject myself with a weekly biologic treatment. Without access to insurance, I could not afford to pay for these medications. I would lose access to my team of 17 doctors. So without my Social Security disability and my Medicare, I would not be speaking with you today. I would have perished. And yet there are so many people who have lost their battles with their diseases, just waiting to be approved for this program. I used to be very private about my health, but once President Trump was elected and set to repeal the ACA and got Social Security and Medicare, I could no longer be silent. In December 2016, I decided to advocate for healthcare and Social Security on Twitter. In 5.5 years, I've traveled to Washington, D.C. 33 times. I was just there on July 14th for the first time in 2.5 years. And talking with members about Social Security, I've collected the healthcare stories of thousands of people who shared their personal stories and concerns with me. I've held over 700 advocacy meetings with Democratic and Republican members of Congress alike. I've also had the honor to testify in Congress before 3 separate House committees. People on Social Security, SSDI, and SSI have told me, because of the threats recently stated by Senate Republicans like Lindsey Graham, Ron Johnson, Rick Scott, Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, and many, many, many others, that they feel alone, scared, and afraid when they should be focusing their energy on their own well-being. And we paid into Social Security and Medicare. These are our earned benefits. It is our money that these lawmakers are trying to steal. When I was able to work, I paid into Social Security, as we all do. While most people think of Social Security as only being there for retirement, it also provides payments to the long-term disabled for people like me who are no longer able to work. And I know our country's disability system works because I've had to rely on it through numerous major healthcare crises. It is so crucial to share your stories because by sharing your healthcare journeys, you're putting a human face to what would otherwise be considered data. This is the reason I continue my advocacy. It energizes me. And these last 5.5 years has given me a new sense of purpose in my life. I like to believe that you are not only listening to my voice today, but the voices of the thousands of others I have represented. Thank you all for fighting for everyone on Social Security, especially the claimants. It is so personal to me. We appreciate your time, encouragement, and support, but I have to leave you with an ask. Join me in making a promise to never stop fighting until we expand benefits for all and overhaul the application system to expedite the process for patients applying for SSDI and SSI. They should not have to wait for years. It's a tragedy and a shame on our country, but my dream is that I will live to see this day. Thank you all very much.
Peter, thank you so much for both your courage and your advocacy. And next we will hear from someone I greatly admire, Julian Blair. Julian, I think you're muted.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me today. I want to thank the Congresspeople for all the work that they are doing, because I've been running back and forth to Congress for the last 5 or 6 years. I can't remember now, because it's so important that we continue to work to increase and expand our Social Security. And I want to thank you for letting me tell my story today. My name is Julian Blair, and I'm a retiree living in Washington, D.C. Now, I was born in Caroline County, Virginia, and began contributing to Social Security at the age of 15 by working in a local tomato factory there. I continued to earn Social Security benefits while a member of this great nation's military in both the Army and the Air Force. After 23 years of service, including combat time, I retired from the military and continued my career with Corning Glass Works. Today, Social Security is a critical part of my income, yet I must tell you, though I worked and contributed all my entire life, my Social Security benefits is too low to cover my monthly expenses. A matter of fact, it doesn't even cover my rent. Thankfully, because of my military service, I also receive a military pension, so I do okay, but that's not everyone, okay? So I am concerned about my family, friends, and neighbors, and millions like them who are trying to live on Social Security alone. In my own family, my stepdad worked for 42 years, both a full-time and a part-time job. He was a prideful man who believed I can take care of my family. I can do the things that I need to do to make me a good citizen. Yet, when he retired, his Social Security, his savings, and his other income wasn't enough, and he had to go back to work. He could not make it. I watched this man cry because his dignity was gone. It was so hard to watch what he went through, and I still have a hard time today reconciling that, even 6 years after he has passed away. On top of that, my mother, his widow, could not make ends meet on her small Social Security income. Fortunately for her, she had 4 sons who were willing to pitch in and support her. But not everyone had 4 sons to depend on. And even though we were willing and glad to take care of our mother, she felt that it was a burden on us, and no one should feel that their existence is a burden to anyone. And Social Security goes a long way in making sure that that is not happening to many of our seniors. But Social Security was not only important for retirees and my family, it was also a lifeline for my brother, who worked for years as a as a social worker. In his late 40s, he had to leave the workforce due to chronic back pain. For decades, his only income was Social Security disability until eventually he got a small pension from his time working for the state of Maryland. If not for his family and his wife working, he would have been homeless. Social Security, disability, and other pensions was not enough to even take care of his daily expenses and medical expenses. Over the years, I have met countless retirees and others who have been destitute who would have been destitute without their Social Security. Yet even with Social Security, some people cannot afford to pay their light bill, or even worse, pay rent and buy food. I recall a grandmother, who happily bought her grandkids brand new pencils each year for school. It was a special treat, one her grandkids looked forward to every year. She did this every year until her Social Security stopped keeping up with all her other expenses. That was the one luxury she could reluctantly give up. Think of that, not even being able to buy a pencil for your grandkids. Another woman I knew from Maryland, who had been retired for 15 years, until at the age of 87, she had to go back to work because her income could not cover her basic needs. We're not talking about vacations, fancy cars, but necessities: food, medicine, rent. Too many Social Security beneficiaries live on the brink of disaster. Once a month, I volunteer to distribute food in Montgomery County, one of the richest counties in the United States. There I met a woman who told me that her Social Security runs out the last week of each month, and without the food that she receives from us, she would not be able to eat. Just imagine what $20 increase in Social Security would do for this individual. So with all due respect, I believe it's beyond time for all of Congress to get behind expanding and protecting Social Security, not cutting. Social Security is an invaluable benefit. These stories I shared with you today are not just isolated to my family, my neighbors, and my friends. Our stories represent the stories of over 64 million Social Security beneficiaries across this nation. Beneficiaries in your district, Congresspeople, and your state who have worked hard. So we will not get rich if you expand Social Security, but it will allow us seniors and many other people who depend on Social Security to live with a little dignity, a right all of us have earned and should expect to receive from our country. Thank you.
Julian, thank you so much for that really moving statement and bringing a real face to all the 65 million Social Security beneficiaries, Peter, as well. And now we will have some videoed questions. The Chairman Larson and Representative Jayapal have graciously agreed to answer some questions. So we have our first question from Robbie Stern, a constituent of Representative Jayapal, who has a question for her.
Representative Jayapal and Representative Larson, my name is Robbie Stern, and I'm active with an organization here in Washington State, Puget Sound Advocates for Retirement Action, better known as BZARA. And the first thing I want to do is I want to thank you for everything you are doing to try and make it possible for seniors to live their lives with dignity, respect, and economic security. I just want to tell you the story of 3 women that are part of our organization who play an active role in our organization. All 3 of them rely on Social Security for the lion's share, the lion's share of their income. All 3 of these women have had to have their life displaced because they do not have enough financial resources to live as they want to live. One, a talented editor had to move from Seattle to South Tacoma to live with friends because she could not afford to live in Seattle. The second, who spent most of her adult life in Seattle as a librarian, had to move to Tukwila, a community that she knows very little about because she could not afford to live in Seattle. And the third, another very talented copy editor, has to move around because she cannot afford to find a place where she can live and in Seattle. So what I want to ask you is, what more can we do to help you get legislation through the Congress that actually expands Social Security benefits and raises or scraps the cap to help resource the expansion of Social Security benefits so these women and millions of people like them have an opportunity to live their senior years in the way they would like to and in the way they really are entitled to. Thank you again for all that you do.
Robbie, thank you so much for that question and for the tremendous work that PSARA is doing. We are so grateful to PSARA for all of the work that you've been doing on Social Security and on Medicare. I know you just did a concert on Saturday night, which I was proud to come to, about not privatizing Medicare and continuing to expand Social Security. And I also want to just say thank you to Peter and Julian, because I really think, to your question, Robbie, that one of the most important things for people to do is to tell these stories, to make it real, what we're talking about, and then to actually advocate with their members of Congress, with the leadership of both parties in both chambers to pass Social Security 2100, John Larson's bill. And what you are raising is so important in terms of the inflationary costs around the country. Prices have been going up, and Seattle is no exception. And people who are on fixed incomes, like seniors on Social Security or anyone on Social Security, are really struggling to deal with that. The cost of living in Seattle is 53% higher than the national average. And over just the last year, costs in Seattle have increased by more than 10%. Food costs have gone up by 10.3%. Energy costs have gone up by more than 31%. And housing prices are prohibitive for too many people, like the Seattleites that you talked about, Robbie. So Social Security payments are just not keeping up with this increase, whether for disability, retirement, dependent insurance. There has not been an adequate cost of living increase to Social Security payments since 1983. And every single town hall I have, and I've had lots and lots of town halls, this is the issue that people raise, is there is no adequate cost of living increase. And so in the richest country in the world, that's just unacceptable. And so that means passing Social Security 2100, a sacred trust, which will increase the benefit amounts for current and new Social Security beneficiaries and protect against inflation by ensuring an annual cost of living adjustment and setting a new benefit minimum at 25% above the poverty level, so that no one with disabilities or seniors are living in poverty. And what you can do is keep telling the stories, keep advocating, join the movement, go out to events in your district, and make sure you are making your voice heard, because that's what John and I need in Congress to show the momentum that we have behind passing Social Security 2100.
Thank you so much. Next, Marcel Bestman has a comment, which will lead to a question for Chairman Larson.
My name is Marcel Bestman. When I was 62 years old, they automatically gave me Social Security. I'm 88 now. But if I didn't have my Social Security income, I'd have nothing at all.
Marcel Bestman, Chairman Larson, and Representative Jayapal speaks for millions of seniors. Around 1 out of 3 seniors rely on Social Security for all or almost all of their income. That number is likely to grow in the future as the nation faces a looming retirement income crisis. Representative Larson, would you let the people watching know what you are fighting for? How do you want to increase Social Security benefits?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Marcel for the question, and it's poignant. And so many individuals, I think, sometimes get neglected or almost seem invisible in the plight and the situation that they're in. We've heard testimony after testimony before the committee about seniors who are putting food back on the shelf, about individuals who can't afford to pay their prescription drugs. Is it any wonder when Congress hasn't acted in more than 51 years to expand a program? And as both Pramila and Nancy have pointed out as well, imagine that there are 3 million fellow Americans, that's like the whole state of Connecticut, that receive below poverty level checks from their government. 3 million fellow Americans, predominantly women, because of the jobs they held and because they are the caregivers in society. No longer will anyone under our proposal receive a below poverty level check from the federal government. The new floor for Social Security will be 125% of what the government deems the poverty level to be. And so therefore, this will lift 3 million people currently out of poverty and then aid and abet others. But there will also be a 2% across the board increase for everyone in Social Security. There'll also be a tax cut that will impact more than 23 million Americans who continue to work because they need to. We're living in a time of great wealth disparity, and everybody has been saying, every economist worth their salt has been saying, look, one of the ways to close that gap is to start by Congress doing its job and addressing what is their responsibility, making sure that Social Security is there and enhanced in a way that meets the ongoing concerns. In 1971, a gallon of milk cost 72 cents. We all know what's happened to costs and prices since 1971. No one needs a lecture on that. What they need is direct relief and help from the members who take an oath of office and are sworn to obey the Constitution and serve their constituents by doing something very simple: voting their concerns and their needs. And that's why this legislation is so important to bring forward, to provide the direct relief that is going to be most difficult times.
Thank you.
Most difficult times.
Thank you. A comment which will also lead to a question of John Taylor.
Hello, my name is John Taylor. I'm 81 years old. I've been collecting Social Security since I was 65 and 8 months. It wasn't very much when I first started, but now it's very significant, and it's very important that we get our COLAs every year.
The cost of living adjustment, as you know, the Chairman Larson, I'll direct this to you, is extremely important for retirees and all other Social Security beneficiaries on fixed incomes. Representative Larson, I understand that you have plans to update the current measure to make it more accurate in your 2100 Sacred Trust legislation. Would you talk about that?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you for your tireless work on this, and as well as the AARP and others, again, who in testimony who have said, listen, the current COLA system that we have is inadequate. And so for many years, as all of your listeners and can testify, that many times there was no COLA, or a COLA that was below the cost of living. And so obviously there were problems with the formula. And so we've changed the formula so that it's now called something that we designate CPI-E, Consumer Price Index, for E standing for elderly, and the cost that the elderly actually incur. I love Social Security because it is a direct economic enhancement to every single community where people receive a check. It's the best economic development plan because it's sending people money where they directly need it. And where do they spend that money? Right back in their community. Now, this year was unique, however, because of the pandemic and the extraordinary cost that had. So people actually did see a pretty sizable COLA, but because of the unleveled way that this operates, et cetera, what we've created in this legislation is the flexibility to have a COLA that's based, if there is an extraordinary circumstance like a pandemic, or but more typically just the common expenses for pharmaceuticals, for doctor's visits, for food, for glass, for heating and cooling your home. These are the things that elderly spend their money on, and that's how the formula should be calculated. But the way that the legislation is written, whichever is the greater, because we want to make sure that we're there to help seniors, no matter what the circumstance is, that they have a COLA that adequately reflects what their needs are at the time.
Wonderful. Now, let me, another question that we've seen from the audience and from many audiences, many people are confused about where the two parties stand on Social Security. Senator Ron Johnson and other Republicans have been more open of late. Representative Larson, could you educate us about where the Democrats who created Social Security and whose birthday we are celebrating, and today's Republicans in Congress stand on this vital issue?
Thank you, Nancy. But it's pretty straightforward and simple. Republicans want to both cut, privatize, and end Social Security, and have laid it out in their plans, whether it's Senator Rick Scott or Senator Ron Johnson, whether it's the House Republican Study Commission, or whether it's in testimony from Andrew Biggs before the committee talking about privatization still. That is their focus. And Americans, please wake up. And for members of Congress, please wake up and pay attention. When they say they're coming after you, they are. When they said they would repeal the Affordable Care Act after its passage, they came directly after it and tried more than 70 times to do that. When they said it may take us a while or more time, but we're going to repeal women's reproductive rights, they're coming after it. And when they say that they are going to privatize, cut, and end Social Security, they mean it. We mean it when we say we recognize that this is America's #1 insurance program, both for the elderly and for the young, as well as having disability benefits as well. There is no where in the private sector that you could possibly get a program like this. In fact, I come from an insurance sector of the world, and they would be envious to have a 99% loss ratio, which means this, that Social Security is able to administer their entire program for less than 1% of cost. Less than 1%. There is no other governmental program that can do it. There is no private sector program that can do that. Again, highlighting the genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and why we are so committed, not just to protecting this program, but expanding it as Roosevelt intended to do, and is Congress's responsibility to do, to step forward and expand this on behalf of the 3 million people who get below poverty level checks, on behalf of people who have an inadequate COLA currently, on children who need to be able to stay on a policy longer, to make sure that seniors as well, the oldest of the old, get an increase, to make sure that grandparents that have been forced into a role get adequate money that they can to take care of their dependents during this time, and to also make sure that people who have been denied because of WEP and GPO adequate funding and benefits. This ends. Thank you, President Biden, for calling Social Security what it is, a sacred trust. Thank you, President Biden, for saying we will repeal WEP and GPO because people should not have to be penalized because a spouse worked or a teacher worked at a time, and had they contributed and paid into a system, they deserve those benefits because, as Nancy said early on, and as Pramila said, this is an earned benefit. This is not an entitlement. It's an earned benefit. And that's why we're fighting so hard. It's a great question. And we've got to make sure that people understand. Now, we want our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join us and to simply understand this. What is this all about? It's about your mother and father. It's your brothers and sisters. It's your next door neighbors, the people you worship in church with. It's your co-workers. Social Security is the most American plan that we have, as Roosevelt said, to protect us against the vicissitudes of life, the hardships that we will all encounter along the way. A democratic republic recognizes, and we don't have to go back to 1935. You only have to go back to 2008 and 2009. During this Great Recession, when people saw their 401k become a 101k, Social Security never missed a payment. Not a pension payment, not a disability payment, not a spousal or dependent coverage or life insurance payment. That's why it's America's #1 insurance program. And that's why, as President Biden has so articulated so well, it's a sacred trust that Democrats will never violate.
Thank you so much. And thank you for championing the Social Security 2100, a sacred trust that has all of those provisions. It also protects field offices from closing. It protects grandparents raising grandchildren. It has so much in it that I hope that that today's hour has really helped people understand what you are championing and what we are all behind fighting with you for. I think the best way for people to really know the difference between what Republicans and Democrats stand for is stand up and take a vote. Exactly. So if you have any last comments, and then I think we're going to turn to the videos of the others. Do you have closing, or that was a great closing message you already gave us?
Well, I just want to thank Social Security Works, and again, I can't thank Julian and Peter enough for their comments, and my good friend Pramila. I think a lot has been said in a very short period of time. These hours fly, but what remains is the work And we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's all common sense and lays right out in front of us. And as you said, Nancy, all we're asking of representatives on both sides of the aisle is to do what you're elected to do. Represent your constituents and vote. It's that simple.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers today. We now have statements from a number of other House members with, as I said, a recorded message from a surprise guest at the very conclusion. So we will now go turn to those videos. Thank you again to our speakers.
Hello, I'm Congressmember Judy Chu from California's 27th Congressional District, and I'm so happy to be here participating in today's Day of Action to celebrate Social Security's 87th anniversary and to put people over politics. In the 1930s, over half of American seniors lived in poverty, many of them surviving on whatever relatives and friends could spare. So to address the needs of our seniors, Congress created a shield against common threats like old age and disability. And in 1935, President Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law, making a promise to generations of Americans that after a lifetime of hard work, you will not be condemned to spending your retirement impoverished and will have the opportunity to age gracefully. This landmark legislation has now, for nearly 100 years, been integral to the success of those aging out of the workforce, giving them the ability to pursue new opportunities in the next stage of life. In my district in Southern California alone, more than 105,000 individuals ages 65 plus are safeguarded from poverty via this life-saving program. And every week I hear from constituents seeking assistance with the Social Security Administration about how Social Security is their lifeline. That is why I will continue to fight for a program whose benefits are instrumental to our American dream and will not allow Republicans to strip away these protections or make cuts to this vital program. As we speak, Republicans are trying to ramrod proposals which include requiring yearly renewals from Medicare. In short, they want to make seniors prove they are, in fact, seniors year after year. This would result in seniors forced to spend time each year navigating what is often a frustrating and confusing process. Republicans also want to hand the Social Security program over to Wall Street, forcing recipients to gamble their contributions on private investments. This is the same privatization scheme they tried years ago that we know will result in the loss of protections for millions of seniors, further proving these initiatives are not in the best interest of our seniors. These proposals are senseless and will inflict lasting damage to seniors nationwide. And as chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I can say Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders would undoubtedly feel the pain of these needless proposals. Data shows annual household incomes for Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean seniors were all below $28,000, nearly $6,000 less per month than the national average. It's clear Social Security is a lifeline that protects not just livelihoods, but lives. So today we again reject these schemes and commit to Social Security's promise, protecting American lives for another 87 years and many generations to come. That is why I am proud of the work my colleague John Larson is doing in leading the transformative work around Social Security. His bill, the Social Security 2100 Act, will shore up the program to help ensure seniors have stability in their retirement for years to come. It will increase benefits for all recipients, improve the cost of living adjustment, and ensure any minimum benefit is set above the poverty line. It also protects against inflation and repeals the provisions penalizing many public servants. The contrast is crystal clear. Democrats are listening to the American people and working to ensure our seniors and future generations have the ability to retire, and that our Social Security system can support future generations of Americans.
I'm Congressman Troy Carter. Social Security represents a sacred promise made to the American people 87 years ago. It's a sacred promise to all those who have worked to build our great country. It's a promise to the working people of today that in the future, when their working years are over, we will not leave them high and dry. But today, Social Security is under threat from the extreme MAGA Republicans who have plans to end the program entirely in just 5 years. I won't let that happen. On behalf of the over 70 million Americans receiving Social Security benefits and over 140,000 of them living in Louisiana's 2nd District, I vow to put people over politics and to protect Social Security for the seniors today and for generations of tomorrow.
Social Security was amazing accomplishment by the FDR administration, pushed by Frances Perkins, the first woman secretary, who I'm a great fan of. And this picture is a original photograph of FDR signing the Social Security Act with Secretary Perkins standing behind him. So that was a significant action. This is what we are attempting to do and will be successful to do, I believe, in securing Social Security. Before Social Security, if you were an American and you were not wealthy, you had to keep working because there was little pension support. With Social Security, it gave you a chance to be able to retire and live with other income in a dignified and safe way, and it has led to increased life expectancy for Americans, amongst other things. So thank you so much. Social Security is a wonderful example of Americans supporting the social contract and our responsibilities to one another and to seniors.
Hi everyone, it's Ted Deutsch. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of today's Social Security Works Town Hall with my colleagues, John Larson and Pramila Jayapal, as we all celebrate Social Security's 87th birthday. I'm working with my Democratic colleagues to put people over politics and protect Social Security for our seniors and their families. So many of my constituents rely on Social Security, and they rely on it every day to pay their bills and shop for groceries and live their day-to-day lives. That's the importance of Social Security. They earn that income as workers, knowing that the money would be set aside for them from each paycheck, and that one day it would benefit them as well as millions of other Americans in their retirement. Sadly, some of my Republican colleagues have unveiled a plan to end Social Security and Medicare in 5 years, as well as a proposal to raise taxes on middle-class families. That would make it even harder for seniors to prepare for and live well into retirement. But Social Security remains a sacred trust, and it's one that we made millions of American seniors. Together with my colleagues, we'll continue to work hard to protect Social Security, to keep it solvent, preserve it for future generations. In this Congress, I sponsored the Protecting and Preserving Social Security Act with Senator Hirono in the Senate. Social Security ensures that hardworking Americans can retire with dignity. And yet, this critical lifeline is on track for depletion by 2035. Now, every day, I hear stories from seniors in my district about the importance of their Social Security checks to their quality of life. The bill will extend solvency of Social Security. It will ensure that seniors continue to benefit from the programs that they worked so hard to earn throughout their entire working lives. Before I go, I want to just add a really important thank you to Lori Plotnick, president of the Florida Democratic Senior Caucus, and John Bowman of the DNC Senior Council for organizing today's call. That would be John Bauman. That would be Bowser. We appreciate all that you do for Florida seniors every day. Together, today, we celebrate Social Security's 87th birthday, and together, we will ensure that we can celebrate this anniversary for decades to come. Thanks so much.
Hello, I'm Stephen Horsford, Congressman of Nevada's 4th District, and I'm proud to support the 79th anniversary of Social Security. Now, more than ever, we must preserve and protect Social Security. I stand with my Democratic colleagues in not only defending, but also expanding Social Security benefits.
Hi, Don Norcross here. This year, Social Security turns 87 years old. I remember talking with my grandmom when I was a kid, how she told me it let her live her life with dignity in retirement. Didn't understand it fully back then. I really understand it now. We are the wealthiest nation in the world. How we take care of those who need it most, including our seniors, says so much about us as a country and a people. That dignity to retire, those golden years, so important. So let's strengthen Social Security, not just for our generations, but for generations to come. Let's make sure that the next birthday, Social Security is here stronger than ever, and we can do this together. Take care.
I'm Senator Chuck Schumer.
I'm Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts.
Senator Tammy Baldwin.
I'm Congressman Jim McGovern.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky.
Senator Jeff Merkley.
Senator Jean Shaheen.
Congressman Eric Swalwell.
Congressman Chuy Garcia.
Carolyn Maloney from New York 12.
Senator Gary Peters.
Senator Patty Murray.
Congresswoman Susan Wild.
Congressman Joe Morelli.
Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Senator Alex Padilla.
Chris Van Houten, Senator from Maryland.
Congressman David Cicilline.
Senator Ben Cardin. Mike Levin from California's 49th District.
Congressman Jimmy Gomez.
Senator Bob Casey.
Senator Tim Kaine.
Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
I'm Ron Wyden, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee.
I'm going to fight like hell
to protect and improve your Social Security.
I will always fight.
I'm going to fight.
I'm fighting every day.
I'm going to fight for your Social Security.
I'm fighting to protect your Social Security.
I'm fighting for your Social Security.
I'm going to fight for your Social Security.
I am going to fight for your Social Security.
And I will work to protect your Social Security.
I'm fighting to preserve Social Security for all.
And I'm fighting for your Social Security.
I'm going to fight.
I'm going to fight.
And I'll keep fighting for your Social Security.
For your Social Security.
And I will always work to uphold Social Security.
I'm going to fight
for your Social Security.
And I'm fighting to protect your Social Security.
For your Social Security.
I always have and I always will fight for your Social Security.
We are battling every day to protect your earned Social Security benefits.
Today, a hope of many years standing is in large part fulfilled. The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. We can never insure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards and vicissitudes of life, but we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-stricken old age. It seems to me that if the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this security bill, Social Security Act, the session would be regarded as historic for all time.